Alrighty, welcome to lesson 19. This is continuing our story along our solutions to inequalities and our discussion last lesson about what it means to be an inequality and things like that. So today we're really continuing to talk about that. Today is focused on how we can solve one variable inequalities and how we can interpret that solution in terms of the situation. And so that is our objective for today. So let us get started. And so there we go. Our first activity is a bit of a review, right? Determining what it means to be a solution to an inequality. Remember when we talked about inequalities that we have multiple solutions. Sometimes we call that a solution set. Solution set, which is the set of all solutions. Solutions to a certain inequality or to a certain equation. For example, when you see the initial inequality up here, you notice that there are multiple values that make this equation true. In fact, I want you to find me at least two. So how can I determine at least two numbers that fulfill this inequality? And so this is a little different from what we were talking about with equations, where it was much more straightforward that there was usually one solution, no solutions, or infinitely many. Now we have an option of multiple solutions being true for this equation. So moving forward, with 19.2, so a teacher is choosing between two options for a class field trip to an orchard. In Orchard A, admission costs $9 per person and 3 chaperones are required. At Orchard B, the cost is $10 per person, but only 1 chaperone is required. And so at each orchard, the same price applies to both the chaperones and the students. So we're not talking about different pricing in this scenario. So when you're going through, right, which orchard would be cheaper if the class visits, right? Cheaper is our keyword here. And so let's see if we have 8 students. I know that the admission cost is $9 per person. So $9 per person and 3 chaperones are required. So I have 8 plus those 3 chaperone, which gives me 9 times 11, right? Which gives me $99 total. And Orchard B, right, this is for A. Orchard B, right, you don't even necessarily have to create your full equation yet either, right, or generalizing it. I'm just saying, all right, so the cost here is $10 per person. Oops, $10 per person. $10 per person multiplied by how many people do we have? We have 8 students plus that 1 chaperone, which gives me 10 times 9, which gives me $90. So in fact, I know that Orchard B would be cheaper in this scenario. And so try to see what's going to happen when you have 12 students and when you have 30 students, right? Which becomes cheaper as you go along. And then moving on to the second part, this gives us, in this curriculum, we give you the equation, right? It's the first equation, and you could see where that came from, right? This was Orchard B, and this referred to Orchard A, right? Should have been familiar from what I was doing before. And she writes the inequality between the two of them, right? 9 in parentheses x plus 3, and it was less than 10 n plus 1, not x, sorry, n plus 1. And so the question is, what does n represent in this statement? And so if you want to think about it for a second, when I was writing the equation 9, 8 plus 3, and I had my other equation that I was solving, 10 n plus 1, 8 plus 1, n was replaced by 8. I substituted 8 in. So what does n represent? And so then what does it mean then for it to be an inequality and an equality, right? If 9n plus 3 represents the cost of going to Orchard A, and 10n plus 1 is the cost of going to Orchard B, what does that solution represent, right? The equation here represents the two options, Orchard A and B, costing the same amount of dollars, right? That is the key word. When they're equal, they cost the same amount. But if they're unequal and you have an inequality, here the solution represents the number of students, right? That's what our N represents. On the field trip, that would be cheaper to visit Orchard A, right? This is Orchard A. So that means that this cost, right, if this is B and this is A, this means that the cost of Orchard A is less, right? Keyword less than Orchard B, the cost of Orchard B. And that's what you're looking for. What does that less than represent? Right? If 9n plus 3 and 10n plus 1 represent the cost at both orchards, then what does that equal sign, that less than sign and equal sign represent? That's the key part of this lesson today. And so you'll get some more practice working with that with 9.3 A and B. But remember, when we want to graph our solution, so now go back to your previous slide, find the solution to this equation, this inequality, and figure out how we want to graph it. And just as a review of graphing inequalities, let's say our solution, this is not the correct solution, so I'm just telling you all now. Let's say it is x is less than 20. Not true for this one, I'm just giving you an example. We want to have an open circle because it is less than and not less than and equal to. Equal, right? Less than, this is a closed circle and this is an open circle. And if we're less than 20, then I know that all these numbers are less than 20 and would be be part of the solution set of this. And so go back and solve your inequality, right? We have this inequality 9n plus 3 and right, 9n plus 3, 10n plus 1, right? Distribute your 9, distribute your 10, and then solve for your inequality there, right? We would get 9n plus 27 is less than 10n plus 10. Combine your like terms, right? Subtract by 9n on both sides. This gives me 27 is less than n plus 10. And so I will leave you to find out the last, to do the last step and then demonstrate it on the next slide. So then as you go through 9.3, you want to do the same thing, right? First, solve your equation that's given here. You want to graph that number on the line. Remember, when it's an equal sign, you only have 1 point. And so here you just want to create your scale. If this is my solution, then you want to take a look at comparing two of the jobs together. If the left side here represents the hotel job, right? This represents our hotel pay, and this represents our restaurant pay. Which one is cheaper depending on the number of hours? And so you want to complete that for 19.C. And in 19.3D, it is showing you the graph as well and what it represents, right? The two inequalities represent the solutions to the equation. Which one represents which, and make sure you pay close attention to the less than and equal than sign, less than and greater than sign. And last but not least, with 19.5, you're exploring you're exploring what it means to be equations to the system, right? This part you want to look at, okay, this is an exploration of what does it mean for the x values and the y values, right? If this is my x, right, I'm sliding my x values, right? When x equals 0, or I can get a 0. When x equals 0, what are your values of easier just type it. When x equals 0, what are your values of this equation and this equation? And as I increase, what do you notice? Like, pay attention to what it means to have an intersection and that both of your solutions are equal to each other. What happens when I am at x equals 3 and things like that? What happens when I'm at x equals 1? And so then you want to compare each of those. What values of x make them equal to each other? What values of x make them less than each other? And what values of x make them greater than each other? And so you can create your inequalities and solve them, but you could also just take a look at the graph. How do you know when one equation is going to be greater than the other? And my big hint for you is to take a look at what happens when they're equal. So why is that number significant? And so last but not least, take a look at the lesson summary. If you have any questions, please let me know. This gives you also another example of what it means to be a solution set to an inequality and what a graph of an inequality looks like. So I will see you in lesson 20.